This is the His and Her Money Show, where we talk about managing money, marriage, and everything in between. Now, here are your hosts, America's #1 money couple, Talaat and Tai McNeely.
Welcome back to an all-new edition of the His and Her Money Show with America's #1 money couple. I'm Talaat.
And I'm Tai, and we're from hisandhermoney.com, where we're managing money, marriage, and everything in between.
Welcome back to the show. We're super glad to have you here with us, tuned in to another great edition of the His and Her Money Show, a show that's going to be super helpful for you because we're going to be talking about home ownership and some costs that you need to consider before jumping into such a big purchase. But before we get into that, let's talk about today's show sponsor, which is ClearPoint. ClearPoint is your ally in the fight to financial freedom. They offer totally free credit counseling where you get to sit down with a credit professional, look over your credit report, and come up with a game plan to get your credit in a better position. To find out more details of how you can get free credit counseling, all you have to do is go to hisandhermoney.com/ClearPoint. Okay, guys, now listen. The biggest, and I mean the biggest purchase that you're ever going to make is that of a home. And so we want to make sure that you are positioned well for such a big purchase, which is why we put this show together. We're going to be talking with Tia Chambers from financiallyfitandfab.com, and she's going to be helping us think through all the costs that we need to be considering.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this particular episode because this was information that I wish that we would have known, prior to buying our home. Oh my gosh, 10 years ago, our first home 10 years ago. When you think about purchasing a home, you just really think about the purchase price, right? And maybe the closing costs. But there are so many different other costs that you should definitely know about and consider prior to buying a home. So I'm really, really excited to dive in and hear what she has to say.
Let's take a listen. Hey, Tia, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hi, Tia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so ecstatic. I've seen you guys on Periscope so many times. So happy to be on the podcast today.
Awesome. We're excited to have you here with us because you got some great information and insight that our audience can definitely use and learn from. But before we take a moment and dive into this topic, can you just take some time, introduce yourself to the audience and let them know what you're all about?
Definitely. Well, my name is Tia Chambers, and I started the blog Financially Fit and Fabulous, or Financially Fit and Fab. I started that back in February of this year. So far, I really focus on helping millennials kick their finances into shape. So I focus on budgeting, saving, investing, but you have to have fun while you're doing that. So to have a few articles about travel hacking as well. So I really want to empower millennials to be comfortable with their finances, to become financially independent, and to reach that next level. So in my professional field, I also have worked in the student loan industry for over 4.5 years. Right now, I work for the second largest mutual fund company in the U.S. So I also have a background in financial services and student loans, which definitely helps me to educate my audience about finances.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about purchasing a home for the first time. So in your opinion, what is the biggest mistake that most people make when attempting to purchase a home for the first time?
I'm so glad you asked because I actually bought my first home back in March of this year. And I have a lot of friends that are also either buying a house now or bought a house within the last year or so. And they just don't prepare. They just say, oh, my lease is up for my apartment right now. I just want to go buy a house. So it's just so important that whether you're looking to buy a house in the next 6 months or even 2 years, that you start preparing as soon as possible. And by preparing, I mean it's time to pull your credit report, making sure that your credit is in shape, but also saving, because a house purchase is really one of the largest purchases that you might make in your lifetime. I mean, I know me, it's the largest purchase I've made thus far. So it's really important that you prepare far in advance, that your finances are in order, because that really makes the process as smooth as possible, but it also saves you money in the long run.
Absolutely. You know what? I think the timing is another big issue for a lot of people because we're sold the pipe dream that, when you graduate from college, you get your job, next step is you gotta be a homeowner. You don't want to throw money away on rent. You gotta buy a home. Talk about the pressure that comes along with that, hearing that messaging over and over and over again, and how sometimes it can lead you into disaster if you're not able to kind of filter through the noise.
And that is so important. And that's why it's important to really think about the total cost and total picture of buying a house, because just because, your friends are buying a house or people are pressuring you doesn't mean the time is right for you. Along with the house not only comes a mortgage, but a lot of other responsibilities. So you definitely want to make sure that you're ready. And just because your family might be saying, oh, you're ready, you have a good job, you graduated school, doesn't mean you're actually ready. A house is definitely a big commitment. And you just have to know when the time is right for you.
So you believe that there are 10 costs of home ownership that most people have not considered. Can you expound on what the first one is?
Definitely. So the thing is, I am super into Googling things. So when I went to buy a house, I just wanted a nice article that said, hey, you want to buy a house, do these things, these are the costs, and this is what you'll find. The thing is, I couldn't find any articles anywhere that really outlined all the costs involved with home ownership, which is why I really wanted to, take to my blog and help people that are interested in buying a home. So I think one of the costs that people don't realize, people always read articles about, save for your down payment. Your down payment should be 20% of your home purchase price if possible. So you hear about that, but you don't hear about all the other money that goes into buying a house. So the first thing is the earnest money. So basically, earnest money is money you put down when you're really seriously interested in buying a home. It lets that seller know that you're serious, that you're not going to put money down on multiple homes, only one home. Typically, it can be as little as $500 to $1,000, but it could be as much as 2 to 3% of the offer amount, depending on what area you live in terms of the U.S. So for me, for example, I found a home that I really liked and I fell in love with. And after I told my realtor, I'm ready, go ahead and put that offer in, he said, okay, I'm going to put the offer in, but within 24 to 48 hours, you need your $1,000 ready for your earnest money. So I was prepared and I felt comfortable putting that in. But if you don't know about that price, it can definitely be a shock that, I thought I wouldn't need my money until closing time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a good one. The second cost to consider is the good old home inspection. Can you kind of break down what exactly a home inspection is and the cost that may be associated with that?
Sure. So the home inspection is one of those next big costs that you have to pay for when you're going to put a offer in on a house. So after you've already paid your escrow money, basically, this happens when someone comes out, someone that you hire or a third party, and they really inspect the condition of the home. So they look for its construction, safety, mechanical systems. It's not always required, but the thing is, most realtors really recommend that you get a home inspection. For example, you don't want to move into a brand new home and then 2 months later find out you need a brand new roof, which can run you, lots of money. So it's really important that you get a quality home inspector. Although my knowledge of homes is pretty limited, I came around when the home inspection was being done, so I could find out what they were checking for, and if there were things that were, not right, I could get that put into my home offer. So for example, for me, my home inspection was about $400, and there was a minor issue with one of the windows, but I made sure to put that in the offer with the seller. So I told them, hey, I love this house, but upon the home inspection, I found out that one of the windows needs to be resealed properly. Are you going to fix it, or can you come down on the price? Luckily, they did go ahead and fix that. But if there are major issues in the house, that might be a reason that you would want to find a new house for you.
Now, where can someone look if they're looking for a inspector that does home inspections? Should they ask their realtor, or is there a special site that they can go to?
Sure. I think it's definitely important to ask your realtor, because they should be familiar with, home inspectors in the past, or friends and family that also might have gotten home inspections. There are also some government agencies, state or government federal agencies that can help you find good home inspectors. So I'm in Indiana, so there was an agency in Indianapolis that also gave me some guidance on, non-bias and quality home inspectors. So I originally, yes, definitely went to my realtor and asked, do you have a couple names? But I also went to that, third-party nonprofit that can also give me some other names.
Awesome. So can you walk us through the next costs that are associated with home ownership that many people probably aren't considering, and that's PMI or MI? Talk us through what those acronyms mean and how that should factor into when we're shopping for a home.
PMI stands for private mortgage insurance, and MI stands for mortgage insurance. So they're both very similar, but they differ depending on what type of loan that you're getting. So if you're getting a conventional loan like through the bank, PMI or private mortgage insurance is required if your down payment is less than 20% of that purchase price. Eventually, though, PMI can go away once you have at least 20% of equity in your home. Mortgage insurance is similar in that if you're not putting at least 20% down in terms of your down payment, you're required to pay that. The main difference is mortgage insurance is required for borrowers who get FHA loans. So both the cases, basically, it's insurance. So in case that you default on the loan and you are unable to pay for some reason, the bank is able to get their money. So one reason it's so important to consider the PMI or MI, obviously in a perfect world, everyone's going to put 20% down. But we don't live in a perfect world. So it's something to consider because you might look at third-party websites and they say, hey, you can get a $300,000 house and your mortgage payment monthly is only going to be $800. Well, the thing is, a lot of those sites are taking into account that you're putting 20% down so that you don't have like PMI or mortgage insurance. And they're also taking into consideration that you have the best credit score. So, I hope you have a great credit score if you're looking for a house, but it's reality. So if you're unable to put 20% down on the house, definitely consider that you may have an extra between $80 to $100, $150 in your monthly payment just going to that insurance.
So what is the fourth cost of home ownership that people typically don't consider?
Sure. So the next cost of home ownership that people typically don't consider is closing costs. I know closing costs was something that I did not consider. So closing costs basically are the fees paid at the end of the real estate transaction. So this could be your mortgage application fees. It could be the home warranty. Could be your title service costs. It could be attorney fees. The list really goes on for all the fees lumped into closing costs. There was a great article that I read on Zillow recently that mentioned that home buyers typically pay between 2 to 5% of their purchase price in their closing costs. And on average, that comes out to be about $3,700. So it's definitely important that you realize, man, I came up with my 20% down payment, but I also may need another, $3,000, $3,700 for my closing costs. Good news is, though, like in my case, for example, my seller actually paid the closing costs. But if I didn't know that was even an option by talking to my real estate agent, I would have been stuck with an extra, $3,000, $3,700 of costs and just to close.
And now a word from our sponsor, ClearPoint. One thing we talk about all the time here at His and Her Money is the challenge of paying off credit card debt. And one of the best resources available to people struggling with credit card debt is nonprofit credit counseling. So I'm here with Thomas Nitchie from ClearPoint, one of the largest and most trusted credit counseling agencies around. So Thomas, when exactly is credit counseling a good option for somebody?
If somebody feels that they're just one paycheck away from financial ruin, that's a really good time to reach out and get some advice, whether it's just help with your budget or whether you have 3, 4, 12 credit cards and you're just juggling those payments and just making the minimum payments. That's a really good time to find out what your options are when it comes to credit counseling. For those who are curious, where can they go to find out more information about ClearPoint? Sure, they can visit hisandhermoney.com/ClearPoint to get more information about ClearPoint and all the credit counseling services we offer here. And now, back to the show.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So you had a good realtor on your side that kind of made you aware of that. So is that something that the typical home shopper should try and consider put into the contract, is to get the seller to pay for the closing costs?
I think it's definitely important. It all depends on where you live and how competitive the market is. But if you can get the seller to pay for the closing costs, I mean, why not? I was definitely blessed to work with a realtor that works with a lot of first-time home buyers. They were familiar with a lot of the first-time home buyer programs and things that might work to my advantage. But, if the seller can pay your closing costs, definitely that saves you money in the long run.
Now, home ownership cost number 5 is homeowners insurance. Can you talk us through that?
Sure. So homeowners insurance, it's like property insurance, and it protects the home against damages or the possessions inside the home. So it can also cover liability in case there are accidents inside the home or the property. So it's another one of those costs, like a lot of them that I've mentioned, that is not always required, but depending on your lender, they may require homeowners insurance. So this just comes back to, those third-party sites that you may go to. It may say, this is what your mortgage payment's going to be, which is, okay, cool. That's what your mortgage payment is going to be. But it's not taking into account, okay, throw on top of that your homeowners insurance and your PMI. So just another one of those costs that a lot of times you can't get around.
So homeowners association fees is a 6th cost. So for someone who is unfamiliar with that term, what exactly is that?
This HOA or homeowner association fees, they were a big factor in choosing where I wanted to live based upon the cost. So depending on where you live, whether it's like a housing addition or a condominium or townhome, they may charge a fee for the upkeep. So I end up buying a house, and I have an HOA fee. So they end up covering the shoveling of the snow for the main road. They also cover the grass for the areas that have like flowers in the front. They cover the signs. For a condominium or a townhome, they can cover even more things. So they may also cover, the whole exterior of your property. They may also cover the mowing of the lawn as well as shoveling snow. And the thing about HOA fees, they can really range. So thankfully, I feel like I looked up, mine is about $75 per quarter, but some of the townhomes and condos I were looking at were actually about $300 a month. So when thinking about my monthly payment, I was like, so I'm going to pay this much for my mortgage, plus PMI, plus homeowners insurance, and then another $300. Like for me personally, it wasn't worth me getting a condo to have that high of an HOA fee. Sure, it might be great if you're, not wanting to be responsible for the snow or the grass, but that's a whole lot of money to pay on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's an area that a lot of people, especially first-time homeowners, get tripped up because generally a lot of times when people are buying real estate for the first time, they try to ease into it through the purchase of a condo or a townhouse, and they're shopping online at, your favorite websites, you mentioned Zillow or Realtor.com, and they see, okay, the house is this much. If I would put this much down, then my monthly payment is this. But you haven't factored in the fact that a lot of times there's going to be a monthly HOA fee that you have to add on top of your monthly payment. And that has to be factored in as well.
And also, too, I think exactly what you said. A lot of times people don't even realize that homes can also come with an association fee. When we purchased our home, prior to this home, we had a townhome. So we expected to have a homeowners association fee. But when we purchased our home, a standalone home, when we found out there was a homeowners association fee, we're like, what? But then it made a lot of sense. The common areas need to be taken care of. So everybody, for us, we just pay $25 a year, which is awesome. But it takes care of the entryways and things like that. So that's definitely a cost that sometimes can be hidden, or it can kind of catch you off guard if you're not familiar with it.
Now, for those who don't have an HOA fee, because, when you do have an HOA fee, that, like you said, it covers things like lawn care and snow removal. But if you're about to purchase a piece of real estate that does not have an HOA fee, then you need to factor in lawn care and snow removal. So how do we go about figuring the cost of that when we're trying to figure out which type of house to buy?
Sure. So in terms of lawn care and snow removal, first off, I think it really comes down to you knowing yourself. So are you the one who's going to be mowing the lawn every week or every 2 weeks, as well as shoveling the snow? So personally, I bought my home by myself. And so I said, I'm going to save money. I'm going to be frugal. I'm going to, mow the lawn by myself. I'm going to shovel the snow by myself. which is cool and all, but for someone who's never had a house, that means you're also going to buy a lawnmower. You're going to either buy a snowblower or get a shovel, also having ice. So it really is thinking about, so am I going to do it myself? And if so, is it going to be a one-time cost plus the time, buying that lawnmower, making sure it works properly, or am I going to outsource and hire someone? Because if you are going to hire someone, that's a built-in cost that you're going to have pretty regularly. And so that's something that, with apartment dwelling, I was honestly spoiled, and a lot of people are spoiled. You just know, I come home, everything looks nice. When it snows, someone else takes care of it. So that's definitely a consideration. So yeah, personally, I end up buying a lawnmower, and I mowed the grass for the most part. But then you also have to think about, hey, am I going to be home to mow the grass? There was a part in the summer where I was out of town a lot, and it just is time consuming to, take care of the grass and take care of the snow. So, of course, it's a cost, but it's also a time commitment.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Your eighth rarely consider homeownership costs is increased bills. How can people figure these costs out during their home search?
Increased bills is a tough one to figure out how much your, heating bill or your air conditioning cost is actually going to cost when you buy a house, but it's something you definitely need to consider. So some of the bills that I wasn't aware of or didn't have previously that, becoming a homeowner I was introduced to include an alarm system. So I previously didn't have one, and now I have an alarm system. So it includes shopping around online, who's going to give me the best deal. And I was even able to negotiate between a couple different alarm companies to get the best deal. Also things like water, sewage, and trash. I know personally my apartment complex covered all of those costs. And so those are definitely bills that I, have on a regular basis. But in addition to, depending on the square feet of your current dwelling versus where you're coming from, that could be increased heating bills and air conditioning bills. So that was one for me personal that it was hard to estimate up front, but I definitely was conservative in the first month or so, saying, hey, I can't blast the air conditioning too high because I don't want my bill to be $300, or, now coming up, it's going to be my first winter in my house. So I'm very conservative about, okay, should I buy a space heater and try to save money there, or just stick with blankets? So far I'm sticking with the blankets, but it's just something to be prepared for. Like, am I able to handle the extra heating bill in my budget if I went from a 800 square feet apartment to a 1,600 square feet house?
Definitely got to consider that. That was something that we had to talk about, moving from a townhouse to a single family home. The size of it was very different. And so naturally we're like, man, so the bills are definitely going to be, because it's going to cost more to heat. It's going to cost more to keep it cool. So definitely got to consider those things when you are trying to move on and move to a different space. You also teach that we should consider other incidentals when shopping for a new home. What do you mean by that?
Other incidentals is kind of a catch-all, but with an apartment complex, I know I was spoiled. If something breaks, you immediately call the front office and say, hey, my air conditioning went out. Hey, my toilet's not working. But when you own your own home, it's really up to you. So if the air conditioning breaks, that's on you. If you need a new roof, that's on you. And a lot of the costs associated with homeownership are more than just a couple $100s. They can literally be thousands of dollars. That's why it's so important that you really have an emergency fund. And when you're saving for a home, I know it's hard. You're trying to get your down payment together and then all these other costs I've outlined, but make sure that money is separate from your emergency fund. Because if you buy your house and then something breaks 3 weeks later or 3 months or even 3 years later, you're the one responsible for paying for that. So really other incidentals could be anything big or small, but it's just so important that you have an emergency fund to take care of those things.
The 10th cost might be the biggest one of all, and that is opportunity costs. Can you please expound on what you mean by that?
Opportunity cost is definitely a big one, especially since I, mainly talk to millennials. So opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. So, for example, say you get your dream job. I live in the Midwest. Say I got my dream job in California. If you have an apartment, you can probably talk to your landlord, hey, can I break my lease? Hey, can I sublet, or can I just pay the rent for the rest of my, time period? But if you have a home, you have a lot of different conversations going on in your head. Can I rent it out? If so, am I going to be the responsible landlord? If something breaks, I still have to fix it. Am I going to try to sell my house quickly? But there are definitely costs with selling a house. So just overall, if you're trying to be independent and be available to go wherever you want to go, a home doesn't have to though, take away some of that independence. It definitely makes you to consider, if I do want to sell my house, what are the costs associated with trying to sell my house? What's the time period? Typically your lease for an apartment is a fixed time period, but a house, it could be a 30-year mortgage. So, am I buying my house where I'm able to sell it quickly? And if I'm not, am I going to have to turn down a good job, or what am I going to do to get out of a house situation? So that's why it's really important, especially opportunity cost, is to figure out, how long do you want to be in the house? And to make sure it's really worth it. Are you ready for home ownership? Like we talked about, lawn care, snow removal, increased bills. It really is a big picture, and opportunity cost kind of sums that all up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, Tia, chances are there might be somebody whose air just came out of their balloon, right? They were all like, yes, I'm about to buy a house. And then they listened to this episode and they was like, wait a minute, I don't know now. This was a lot to consider. Talk to that person and tell them or encourage them that, you know what, maybe now is not the time, but that doesn't mean that never will you be a homeowner. Talk to that person right now who may have just become just a little bit discouraged after hearing all these costs that they need to consider.
The first thing that I would say, if you're considering home ownership and you've heard this and you're like, oh man, I didn't think of all the costs, I would say you are lucky because you found out or thought about the cost now versus getting in the house. The worst situation would be you get a house and you're not financially prepared for the house because, a house comes with ongoing bills. Like I mentioned, it could be a 30-year mortgage. So, it's good that you know now and you can prepare. So whether the first step is you're going to pull your credit report and say, hey, let me take a look at my credit and see what's on that and really try to, fix it. Is the next step going to be, hey, do I need to save more money because there are additional costs? Is a third step saying, hey, I want to get a house, but I might have a roommate. So it hopefully, it doesn't deflate anyone. I definitely don't want to deflate anyone from home ownership. But it more so gets your, mind turning and thinking about, what do I need to do now to prepare? And if you feel like, man, this is just so much, there are people that can help you prepare. There are organizations at, the state level that can help you get prepared for home ownership. But it's better that you know now so you have more time to prepare.
Awesome. Now, can you tell our audience more about your website, financiallyfitandfab.com, and how they can connect with you?
Sure. Well, once again, thank you so much for having me on the show today. You all can reach me at www.financiallyfitandfab.com. I send out regular emails once again about budgeting, saving, investing, credit, home ownership, and a side of travel hacking so that we can have fun while we're being financially responsible. I would love to hear from you. I'm also on all the social medias, but head over to financiallyfitandfab.com and you can see my contact information there.
Tia, this has been super incredible. Yes. We know that our audience took good notes and now they feel more prepared and that they're in better position to become homeowners. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the show today.
Thank you, Tia.
Thank you. Thank you both.
There you have it. Everything that you need to know to be in the right position. The right position. That's key because anybody can go out and buy a home these days. But what you want to do is you want to take everything into consideration in your home purchase so that your home becomes a blessing and not a burden.
That's right. That's right. I love this episode. She gave us 10 costs to definitely consider. Some of them I never even thought about, 10 years ago. One of them being opportunity costs.
Yeah.
I think that is so important. Think about that. If you were able to get a dream job, are you okay with having to leave your home? What are your options? Will you rent it out? Will you lease it? It was just like, wow, you're right. She was absolutely right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Definitely share with a family member or friend or anyone that you know that may be on the market or about to go on the market to purchase a home.
Yeah, you got some friends and family that need to hear this information. So feel free to email this to them or send them the link, because we want to help as many people as possible. That's what Ty and I are here to do, is to help people make the right moves with their finances. Well, that does it for this episode of the His and Her Money Show.
Don't forget, check us out over at our website at hisandhermoney.com.
And while you're there, don't forget to pick up a copy of our book, Money Talks, the ultimate couple's guide to communicating about money. It's the one resource that you need so that you and your loved one can get on the same page financially, finally. Here it is. No matter where you are on the road to financial freedom, the key is to start now
and finish strong.
Thanks for tuning in to the His and Her Money Show. For more information on how to win with your finances, be sure to visit www.hisandhermoney.com.